What is up, Stout Nation? It's a big day. I finally got a hydraulic press and we are making a Damascus knife. This is a commission for an integral bolster Damascus chef's knife. We're going to start off with some 15N20 and some 1084, 5 pieces of each, and then we're going to stack them up alternating to get a 10-layer billet. This will be the base of our pattern, but trust me, it's going to get a little more interesting. We're going to clamp them up in the vise and weld them all together. This welder is nothing fancy, 120 bucks from Harbor Freight or something. It's a flux core wire welder. Here's what we got. I won't say I'm the worst welder of all time, but it's a good thing I'm not working on a roller coaster. Now it's time to get her in the forge. I had to get a second forge to do this. It's a propane forge. My old forge is a natural gas forge. Propane burns hotter than natural gas. Who knew? These first couple of passes here are just to set the forge weld and begin to draw out the billet. We're going to be cutting this and restacking it, so we want to get it thinner and longer. This press is my new favorite tool in the shop by far. It's a 40-ton Clark Ironworks press, and I'm so excited to have it. This thing is strong. I mean, that's a big bar of steel, and you can see how much it's squishing it. After these are forge welded, we're going to end up with a bar that looks something like this. And then, once we squish it out and lengthen it, it's going to look something like this. But we're not quite there yet. I'm going to stick it back in the forge, and we're going to draw it out a couple more times. Once we've got a long, skinny bar, we're going to cut it up into 3 equal size pieces. Then we're going to grind off all the forge scale so that we have nice clean surfaces to forge weld. I marked each piece so that nothing gets flipped around, and we're ready to weld it all up and throw it back in the forge for another round of forge welding. This takes us to 30 layers, and then we're going to do it all again. Cut it into 3, grind it, weld it, stack it, forge weld it, draw it out nice and skinny.
All right, 90 layers, all drawn out to about the same thickness as my 15N20. Now all I have to do, cut it to size, weld it up, smush it together.
This grinding wheel isn't a replacement for the belts in this case, but it does help get the scale off faster. Then we weld it up with that bar of 15N20. We throw it back in the forge. All we're trying to do here is set that forge weld good. With this operation, I don't want to draw the bar out basically at all. Once this is done, we're going to end up with a bar that looks like this. 90 layers on one side, 1 solid layer, the same thickness on the other side.
Our bar is forge welded together. Next step is to grind some grooves in both sides on the 2x72 here. I'm going to swap a 36 onto there. And we're just going to try to grind kind of alternating grooves about 1/8 of an inch deep. This is about 1/4 inch. We want to get almost halfway through, but not quite, because we don't want to get through each layer. Does that make sense? Here we go, you'll see.
Make some layout lines, and then here we go. We're shooting for something like this.
All right, we got our ladder ground in. It's time to go back to the forge, draw it out.
When we flatten this bar out, it's going to push those exposed layers from the grooves to the surface, taking us from this to this. This is going to be the cladding for our sand mine. Believe it or not, I'm not just making this up as I go. I do have a plan. You just gotta have a little faith.
Have some goddamn faith.
All right, I've got the bar flattened out. If you look, there's still a couple of little divots, but that's on the Damascus side, which isn't the side I have to forge weld. The 15N20 side is pretty clean, so I'm gonna call it good. I'm gonna cut the ends off. I'm gonna cut it in half. And then I'm gonna weld it up with my 80 CRV2 core and my nickel shims. Wish me luck.
That was a lot of words and not a lot of explanation. So we've got this bar, this wavy bar, that's Damascus on one side, 15 and 20 on the other. We're gonna cut it in half, flip one side, and use those as the cladding. Our core is gonna be 80 CRV2, and the nickel shims will help the weld take a little bit easier. The nickel will also act as a bit of a buffer to help stop the core delaminating from the cladding when I go to heat treat. For this operation, I welded all the seams shut. I don't want any oxygen getting in there for this big weld up. My first pass I did on the flat dies to set the weld, but I didn't get a shot of it. That's my bad. So here I am drawing it out on the rounded dies. That steel on the flat dies is a depth gauge, so I don't accidentally press too deep and have a too thin of a bar. And that's our pattern basically done. The billet looks something like this. We're gonna cut in our bevels. That'll expose the cross section, and we'll end up with something like this, theoretically. What I'm doing now is I'm just isolating material for the tang. This is a good way to conserve material if you have a bar that is not as big as you wish it was. In this case, I didn't really need to do it because it ended up that I had way more material than I thought I did. So I could have just ground that material away, but it's fine. With the tang isolated, I'm going to start forging in a little bit of a distal taper. Not as much as I'm going to be doing in the end because I don't want to distort the pattern. I'm also going to start forging in the tip a little bit, although trying to do that on these rounding dies was not the greatest idea I've ever had. It ends up looking kind of like somebody took a bite out of it. So to remedy that, we're going to clean it up with the hand hammer. Even though I have the press, there are still operations that are just better suited to a hammer and an anvil. This is one of them.
All right, after a lot of fiddling and back and forth with the forge and burning my reference drawing, we finally have a piece of steel that is in a knife shape and is big enough to be ground down. I didn't forge it all the way to shape because I don't want to distort the pattern very much. So we just got it kind of to a tip because I needed the length, but I'm not going to go any farther than this. What I have to do now is I have to take this leftover 90 layer bar, cut it into this kind of rhombus shape because the bolster is at an angle, and then weld it to the blade, forge weld them down, and then we'll be basically done with this part. All right, bolsters are cut. Time to get the scale off and tack weld them down and forge weld the whole thing up.
If I had planned a little bit better and bought my material in a little bit different sizes, I could have avoided this, but this technique works just fine and it saved me a lot of headache. I think I first heard about this technique in one of Jesse Who's videos, and I think he learned it from Salem Straub. Both awesome makers, definitely follow them.
All right, it's forge weld time. This should be the last time in the forge, except for the heat treat, obviously. We ended up a little bit long, but that's better than short. Somehow it got late really fast, but after a little bit of grinding, this is starting to shape up to be very cool. We're gonna do a little test etch. Here's what we're looking at so far. And honestly, it's kind of hard to tell in the video, I feel like, but I'm really, really pleased with this. You can see the 80 CRV2 along the edge and starting to poke through here. You can see the nickel shim, you can see the 15 and 20 layer, and you can see the 100 layer Damascus. So everything is lined up pretty much exactly how I want it. My etch wasn't deep enough to get the bolster really, but you can tell, yeah, you can see that core flowing through there, and that's gonna be sick. So I am really excited about how this is turning out.
Now it's back into the forge for the heat treat.
I just pulled the blade out of its second normalizing cycle. I did that in the propane forge. The biggest difficulty is the bolster. The bolster has so much more thermal mass that it heats up way slower and cools down way slower than the rest of the blade. So for the quench, I'm gonna do it in the natural gas forge, which doesn't get as hot. Because the core is 80 CRV2, I really want to let it soak for 5 or 6 minutes at a little bit above critical temperature. I think that the gas forge is gonna be hot enough for that. We'll find out.
Turns out it was just fine. Quench went off without a hitch. Now it's time to temper. Clamp it up to stop it from warping, and toaster oven 350 for 4 hours. Once it's out of the oven, it's time to start grinding.
It's been about an hour of grinding, and I think I'm pretty much where I want to be in terms of geometry. We're going to do a test etch, see how I did on keeping the core in the center and getting the pattern we wanted.
I'm pretty stoked about this. The core is in the center. There's nothing funky going on where like the shim or the other layers are encroaching on the core. I'll grind a little bit more to pull that up even further, but this is looking really good for where we're at. We got a little bit more movement than I was planning for, but I'm not mad about it. I'll spare you more grinding shots and we'll just cut ahead to finishing the blade. I like to use this little drill sandpaper trick to clean up the transition between the bolster and the blade. Rounds it out, gets into that kind of hard to reach corner. Next up, we're going to polish the choil. This is an easy thing to miss, but it really does make it a lot more comfortable to use. And then it's time to hand sand this sucker all the way up to 1000 grit. It takes a long time, trust me.
Meanwhile,
here's our handle block. It's a gorgeous piece of two-tone ambonia from Ben Greenberg Woods. We're at 10% moisture. This one did not come stabilized, so we're gonna do it ourselves. We're gonna weigh it, it's 220 grams, and then we're gonna throw it in the oven until it stops losing weight. Once it's bone dry, we'll put it in the tank, cover it with the little strainer guy, and then fill it with cactus juice. Then we throw the lid on and pull a vacuum until it stops bubbling, and then leave it in the tank for twice as long as that.
the next day,
Then it's back in the oven to cure the resin.
3 hours later,
Our block is fully stabilized. Now it's time to start turning it into a handle. I've got some markup lines. We're going to drill out our slot. It's all about getting a little bit closer each time. There's the first try, and then the second, and then the third. And we're pretty much there. Then I've got some very rough scribe lines for where I want my facets to be, and it's time to start making them happen. Now that's starting to look like a handle. I'm getting to the point where I want the handle to return to the same place every time I take it off and put it back on. So we're going to bed the tang. Basically, I'm going to load the tang up with grease so that the epoxy doesn't stick to it. I'm going to fill the handle with epoxy, and then I'm going to let it cure partially, and then take the blade out. This will make the inside of the handle a perfect mold to the tang so that it goes back in the same place every time. Tragically, I lost the final day of footage, but imagine some more grinding, some more sanding, and then the blade etch, and then the final glue up. Are you imagining? Good. Now check out the finished knife. I'm stoked with how this build turned out. All the different layers, the contrast, the brute de forge, and that two-tone ambonia is spectacular. Feels great in the hand, balance point just in front of the bolster. This thing's gonna be a workhorse. That's pretty sharp.